Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Tah Cole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow-through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
Hey fam, super excited to get into this episode. It's Tah here, and today I'm going to be diving in with somebody truly remarkable. Her name is Dr. Shaquita Starks, and she has over 25 years under her belt in nursing, and 15 of those years are as a nurse practitioner. She's a PhD. She's not just an expert, she's more like a holistic health warrior in the realms of family practice and mental health and wellness. She's not just about medicine, she's about the soul behind it. She's an assistant professor. She's got a PhD in nursing science, and her journey for her own mental health has been remarkable. And we get into some really touching spaces in this interview where she talks about her own life and how psychedelics have helped her to shift into a space of forgiveness that she never experienced before. And that is translated into the work that she does with every client that she has. Forgiveness is a huge space that she works with people on, in how people get stuck in their journey towards health, towards mental health, towards physical health, is observing forgiveness. So we're going to dive in. I can't wait. She's about the whole mind, body, spirit connection. She's just like me. She's been in it for a while. We have a lot of similarities, and she's a nurse. This is the third interview in the last 3 weeks that I've brought nurses to you, and I'm going to be bringing more to you because I want y'all to know that as we start to grow together in this psychedelic coach space, nurses are starting to become a force in this. And if you're a nurse and you're leaning into this, join the wagon, join the party, y'all. Let's move beyond the stigma and start to see that psychedelics are expansive for everyone. So I can't wait to get into it. Let's go. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. It's Tah. I'm here with the one and only Dr. Shaquita Starks, PhD, okay? She's awesome, an amazing human being that I met at Reconsider in New York a few months back in the fall. I'm super excited to bring her to you. We're going to have an amazing conversation today. Peace, Shaquita. How you doing, family?
Peace, brother. I am doing well. Thank you for asking, and thank you for inviting me to your wonderful podcast. I really
keep going, keep talking. Your accent is one of my favorite things on the planet. So I can hear you speak all day long, family. Let's go.
bringing the Southern sauce.
I'm saying bringing the sauce. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I'm excited about you being here. I'm excited about you being a nurse in here with me. Again, this is something that I've been bringing to the podcast and bringing to the world, is nurses who are interested in and involved in the psychedelic space, in the plant medicine space, in the growth space outside of the traditional healthcare circumstances and situation. I'm really excited to be here. And I would love for you to tell the people about yourself, tell the people where you're from, what you're doing, what your education, your background looks like, how you got into nursing, and just go for it.
Okay. So I'm from a small town in Mississippi called Grenada. Most of the time when I tell people, they're like, what? When I say, I'm from Grenada. And they're like, oh, you're from the island. Because they'll say, oh, you look exotic, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, don't you hear my accent? So I'm from the deep south, very small town. Everyone knows everyone. We have one school and a few churches. So everyone in the community knows each other. So a lot of people know me in my small town. I'm a mother of 3 children. I went to school in Grenada. I initially started off at a community college because I had 2 children very young. And so before I was 20 years old, I had 2 children. So I had to go to a community college. So I didn't feel any kind of way of starting off that way. Even though I wanted to go to a university, I got my associate's degree in nursing initially back in 1990. I've been a nurse for a very long time now. almost half of my life. And then I moved to Memphis when my last child was born. He was about 3 months old. So I moved to Memphis at the age of 24 with 3 children by myself because I wanted to return to school to become a nurse practitioner. There's a school in Memphis called the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. And I went there to obtain my bachelor's degree. Then I got my master's degree. And then I was talked into getting a PhD because one of my professors noticed I was passionate about working with the community and addressing health disparities. And so I used to write a lot in the program. And she was like, you should go back to get your PhD. And I was like, what? I don't want to be that. But I looked at it and I decided to go ahead and get it. So in short, I was married when I was younger, but I did go through a divorce when my children were younger. So I raised my children with the help of my community, with the help of my mom while I was in school and while I was also working before I went back to school, I was a dialysis nurse. So I worked full-time with the school, full-time, and I was a full-time mom. I got into nursing because I truly, truly wanted to help other people. And I saw a lot of people in my community suffering from a lot of illnesses, specifically things like cancer and diabetes and hypertension. And I wanted to know how to make a better experience for them because I would hear stories of our grandparents going to the doctor one time in their life and then coming out with devastating and not having a good quality of life. And so I just wanted to address the reason why we were not receiving good quality care and what I could do and how to bring my perspectives, my lived experience to nursing because it was a predominantly white field. And so I never saw anyone that looked like me. Whenever I went to the doctor, whenever my mom went to the doctor, when my grandmother went to the doctor, I wanted to make sure that I was able to give back to my community and to address the issues that I saw. Because I saw a lot of people end up on dialysis in my community. And it's just like, how did you go from not having anything wrong to you to now you're on a machine for life? Just things like that inspired me to address health.
Thank you so much for what you're putting in to other human beings and for what you've put into yourself. That's a pretty amazing story. I graduated from nursing school when I was 20 and my daughter was born when I was 18. So we're in a very similar boat. I graduated in 1992 from nursing school. So we've been in the boat for a while.
A long time. Yeah, I was 20 when I graduated too. And my daughter, when I was in high school, I still was able to finish very early because I had a lot of credits in high school. Yeah, I've been in the game for a very long time.
Been in the game, got skin in the game. Thank you for sharing your story. And I wanted you to share your story before I get into what the topic of the day is, because it's very important with what your story is. And the topic that we're going to discuss today is forgiveness. I'm a huge fan of forgiveness and what forgiveness does and how forgiveness flows in the work that I do around my body and myself and the work that I do with human beings in psychedelics and plant medicine. So I would love to hear from you. What is forgiveness?
Yeah, so I'm a lover of words. I like to study words and what they mean and where they came from. I wanted to start off by breaking down this word. Broken down, the word to forgive is an old Germanic word that combines prefix for and the word gives. For as a prefix means away, opposite, which further translates from an old English word indicating loss or destruction. Give has a Germanic Old English root and it means to bestow, to deliver to another, to yield pressure. So essentially to forgive means to give away, to surrender pressure. So when we're forgiving, when we're practicing forgiveness, what we're doing is giving up something. Forgiveness is also a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual practice of releasing. So we know we go through life, we experience a lot of negative events, trauma, things that are not so positive sometimes. A lot of people tend to hold on to that and they can hold on to resentment, anger, and things like that as well. But forgiveness can help people to release that. One of my teachers, Dr. Iana Van Zandt, has taught us that forgiveness is a process of removing errors from our mind in pursuit of harm. It also teaches us that it is to release what is false for what is true, giving up a thought or emotion to facilitate and make space for positive thoughts. Essentially, forgiveness is a principle. Principles are rules of conduct, things that we can live by to operate in existence with each other in society. There are many principles in life. We have love is one, unconditional love, awareness, acceptance, compassion, and things like that. But a lot of those heavy principles we can't get to until we forgive ourselves first, until we forgive others.
Mm. You know, forgiveness is something that, when I was facilitated psychedelic experiences, forgiveness is something that was one of the most challenging spaces for people. And it was one of the spaces that caused people the most pain, the most awkwardness, the most challenge with their money, with their family members, with their health issues, with their body stuff, was forgiveness. And it was a big challenge because people didn't understand what forgiveness was. They thought it was letting somebody off the hook. And it was about the other person. So from my vantage point, forgiveness is all about the self. When I let go of something, when I give that person, when I deliver, when I give up that situation, I'm letting go for myself, and it frees me from it. What's your vantage point on that?
Yeah, I also agree with you. I think a lot of people tend to want to hold grudges and they want other people to suffer. They think that when they don't forgive someone, that they're doing something to the other person.
Mm.
They don't realize that they're doing something for themselves. Right now I work in the mental health space, and I've been doing this for about 11 years now. And most of the patients that I have who experience depression, anxiety, PTSD, and things like that, they're experiencing it because they have not forgiven someone. There's always someone that they need. And I ask them the question after listening to their stories, who is it that you need? Who hurt you? And instantly, most people began to cry or start to express something that happened to them when they were a child that they have not let go of. And they didn't do it so because they wanted their person to receive some sort of punishment for what they did. An example of that would be sexual trauma. I deal with a lot of women who have been molested by family members or raped by other people that they trusted. So for them to forgive someone who committed such a terrible act to them and who violated their innocence and just took away their ability to trust other people is hard for them. So they may ask me things like, if I forgive them, that means I'm just like not holding them accountable for them hurting. And I teach them that forgiveness is not for that person, it is for you. Yes, so I don't ever want to discount anything that anybody has gone. It's horrible to have been raped. It's horrible to have been physically abused or emotionally abused. So I do acknowledge that, but I also teach them the energy behind forgiveness. So they understand it is not for the other person. Because if we understand principles and laws of the universe, what will happen, I don't even want to bring up karma. Some people don't believe in it. Some people do believe in it. But people that do commit acts of violence towards others, they have their own things that they have, their own issues that they have. So you hold a grudge toward that person is not going to make anything worse for them. It only internalizes that within ourselves, and it creates disease and all other mental issues that we have. So I just think when we don't forgive, we're only harming ourselves, and choosing not to forgive others is an actual physical and violent attack upon ourselves. Consequence is suffering for us. There's a quote, and it's been questioned who said it. They say that not forgiving or holding on to anger is like drinking poison and thinking that it will harm another person. It won't harm the other person. It will only harm them. And then in encounters where I have with patients, I demonstrate that by how they are presented. I just ask them, how have you felt since this incident has happened? Most of them have never experienced happiness or joy in their life because they've always ruminated in their minds about what this person did. So I like to teach them to to give it up, to surrender it to a higher power, whatever higher power they believe in, or the God of their understanding for them. I teach them to give it to that so they can make space in their minds to receive what we were created to be, and that is to be love and to love.
You said something earlier that I need to bring back around, right? And it's something that a lot of nurses give me a lot of crap about, and that's karma. Some nurses talk about it, and they're considered the woo nurses, and then there are other nurses who won't talk about it. This is a conversation that I love to have, because once we get into the meat and potatoes of it and we start to overlap and understand these things, karma starts to become a part of their language. What is karma to you?
I was traditionally taught that if you do something bad to someone, this is really elementary. You do something bad, what happen in return? But when we think about universal laws, whatever it is that you give out, that is what you are going to receive back. And I do believe in that law, that karma is something that happens. It may not, and some people don't believe that it is something true, because there are some very successful people who have did very bad things in our society, and they look like they're successful on the outside. And exactly, there's a lot of rich people. You can use our population as an example. The people that have quote unquote oppressed people of color seem to still excel in life. So a lot of people wonder, if karma was real, why are these people still receiving? Why are they prosperous? Why do they have money? Karma may not hit them personally. It may affect someone down their generational line. So I don't think people understand that about karma. It may not affect the person directly that's committing the act, but generationally, someone will unfortunately have to pay for the ill that have been done. So I think that's why a lot of this intergenerational trauma work that a lot of people are doing now is very important, to break some of these quote unquote generational curses. That's my take on karma.
Thank you for sharing that. I have an interesting take on karma, and karma for me is consequence. There's a consequence to every situation, every circumstance, every action, every thought, everything that we do. There's a sequence that happens. And so when I put something out into the ethers, into the world, when I express something to somebody, there's a sequence of how that energy is received and how it moves through the cosmos, how it moves through the planet, how it moves through other people. And when I look at that, there's always a sequence energetically to everything that happens. So all of the things that I work with, a lot of affluent people. I've moved into a position where I work with affluent people so that I have resources to help people who are not affluent. And so I work with entrepreneurs and people who have been in generational wealth spaces, and the people who are trickled down from slave owners and plantation owners and stuff like that. And these people are riddled with all sorts of self-hatred and loathing and internal fights and stuff like that's disrupting them. So they may appear to have these abundant spaces as far as material wealth, as far as financial wealth, and as far as that type of ease, but the ease within themselves is not there. And so that's a karmic space. There's a consequence that happens as a result of it. And so because karma is always active in the background, we may not be seeing what's happening with a person on the surface level, and there's things that are happening in the background. And this is why I always show up in full. This is why I have to show up in my full expression all the time, because when I lie and I put things in the shadow, there's a sequence that happens to me doing things in the shadow or doing things that are disruptive. And so I remove the good or bad from things, and I just look at things as, what is the sequence of things that I want to happen moving forward? And I put that energy out and I watch the sequence happen. Regardless of if I have things, if I have abundance, if whatever that looks like to other people, I'm looking to move that sequence forward. And so the generational curses that are happening, that have happened to people of color, particularly in the United States of America, are shifting. And the people who have done the things in the past, that those generational curses are now coming up to play, and they're coming up to the surface. And all of these things are starting to shift. So karma is a real thing as far as I'm concerned, but it all has to do with consequences. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about anyway, right? It's these consequences.
Yeah, I love that, your explanation of it.
And this is another thing with forgiveness, right? Swinging it back around to why, and this is a question I want to ask you, why do we need to forgive other people? When it comes to things like karma and the consequence of what we're doing, when we don't forgive, there's a karmic load that builds. There's a consequence to that not forgiveness. Why do you believe that we need to forgive other people?
Oh, I think people should forgive other people if they want to be free, if they want to have some sort of liberation and experience something different in their lives. It's just something that just has to be. It's something that people get to choose to do. Um, and to also be able to receive forgiveness. You want to learn how to do it. I just think that people hold themselves hostage, hold themselves captive, and maybe don't grow into their full potential because they're holding on to resentment towards others. So I just think in our humanness that being forgiven is teaching us how to be good humans, just
Mm-hmm.
how to just operate on this planet in a humane way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that slavery space is something that people of color in this nation that we live in have been taught to stay enslaved in many ways on autopilot. And not forgiving the self and not forgiving other people is another way of staying enslaved, is a way of staying trapped. It's a way of keeping that karmic load going by learning to beat ourselves up. And we pass this on to our children, right? We teach our children not to forgive. We teach our children, and I'm not saying to forget a heinous act that has transpired, right? I'm not saying to forget that or to go and have dinner with the person that did something horrible to you. And so I'm not saying that. And understanding that this person had something happen to them that drove them into the position. Now this has happened to you. What can you do with that energy and take it and transmute it into something else so you shift the karmic space? That for me is why I know in my heart and soul that we need to forgive other people, particularly ourselves. We need to forgive first, like you said. That has to happen first. So how can somebody start forgiving? And I know this is something that's a huge part of your practice when you're working with people in mental health. And thank you for that, fam. I really appreciate it. I don't know very many people who move from the angle that you move from. Most people are like, you have to fix your anger. You have to manage your anger. Or you have to take these antidepressants and stop being sad and get out and have some fun. But they haven't forgiven themselves and they haven't forgiven other people. One of the things that we teach in the Condor approach is about the drama triangle. Are you familiar with the drama triangle?
Yes, I saw you illustrate that. So no.
Yeah, right. We have the oppression trap triangle, which is the villain, the victim, and the victor. And the victor is the hero. And when a person stays in a victim space, they cannot forgive. They can't forgive the villain. And so they're constantly calling the villain. Whereas it's a person who did some actions, they did some things, and I've made the meaning that this person is a bad person, and I'm gonna hold them to that. I haven't let them go from that space and be in their space and let them deal with what they've done. I'm holding on to their situation, so I stay in a triangle, which keeps me oppressed, which keeps me a slave. And that's part of leaving this situation. So how can somebody, from your vantage point, start the forgiveness process, and what do plant medicines and psychedelics have to do with it?
Oh, wow. So that's a great question. So I think to start the forgiveness process, a lot of people should begin with themselves. So sometimes we ask people to do things for us that we're not willing to do, even for ourselves. People talk bad to themselves. They discredit themselves. They lower their confidence and their self-esteem, saying things like, oh, I'm stupid, or I made a mistake, so I must be unworthy, or nobody loves me, nobody looks out, everyone is out to get me. When you hear people saying things like that, it's a sign that they they're either holding on to some shame, some kind of regret, and that they have not been able to let go of those things. So I think people should start by first examining what makes them engage in behavior and self-talk that way, and discrediting themselves. Because like I said before, you can't give anything that you don't even give to yourself first. That can be love, that can be compassion, anything. I think people should forgive themselves and learn how to love themselves, learn where they adopt these negative ideas about themselves. A lot of times it's stories that they've been told about themselves, or something that happened to them where they thought they were at fault for it happening. They can use visualizations to do that. There are different techniques to revisit incidents that have happened in the past, inner child work that people can do, going back and visualizing what you could have given yourself during that time that could bring some equilibrium to the psyche. I think people should first start with themselves, forgiving themselves. Why do I call myself unworthy? Why do I think that I made a mistake because I had a child when I was 14 years old? What kind of mindset was I in at the time? What were my circumstances and things like this? Being inquisitive or asking questions versus blaming themselves for whatever reason. And so once people can learn to forgive themselves, then they can extend that olive to other people and also look at things from a state of inquiry versus judgment, blame. What made a person want to rape a child? What happened to them? It doesn't take away from them harming someone else, but hurt people usually. Hurt people. And it's a very hard thing to do, to have compassion for people who have done things wrong. But we really want to look at what could have happened to someone to make them do such a heinous act to another person. Forgiveness is hard. It's very hard work. People look at it as some people being very weak and not standing strong on things that have happened to people in the past. But to move forward as a group of people, it's just to move forward as a person. It's just something that's necessary for growth.
Thank you. At the last Condor Approach, I started off talking about grudges and how heavy grudges were on people. And that inquiry is super important when we're talking about this journey of forgiveness. And when we practice in the Condor Approach, we have what we call the 4 Ins process, which is intake, intention, in the space, and integration around psychedelics. And what you're describing is an intake process, this inquiry. It's asking yourself all these questions. Most people are unaware of the depth of the grudge that they're holding and the intricacy and how woven in this grudge is. And so it's, okay, this person did this to me. How do I feel about it? What is this affecting? Who are the people it's affecting? What is my mood like? What is my health like? What is my diet like? Am I able to interact with other human beings? This inquiry space can go on forever. But the more data we have, the more we can examine the grudge and we can see how functional the grudge is for ourselves and how to actually dismantle that grudge, because we have this data that we're looking at. And so this inquiry space for me, I love the way you put it, have inquiry versus judgment. That's a new lens for me. And there's a lot of judgment around people having things done to them and being in the victim space. And that clouds a person from seeing all the data. And this brings in, you said it's challenging to have compassion. Something, I don't want to misquote you, but I believe you said it's challenging to have compassion. And one of the things that I spoke about when we spoke about the grudge is compassion is wonderful, but consideration is another angle that people are not using. Have you considered what happened? And you were just speaking about this. Have you considered what happened to that person? Have you considered where they came from? Have you considered all of the situations, the financial situations, were they abused and all of this stuff, instead of putting them into the evil box, right? And when you can humanize someone, then you can the forgiveness process for me is a lot easier when I can put somebody into the human space. When I put somebody into the demon space or I dehumanize them, I can't consider everything and I can't gather all the data that's possible. And so the grudge starts to dissolve in that inquiry space. And when we look at that in contrast to the judgment, I really like that angle. Thank you for that. That was really beautifully stated. Yeah, that was beautifully stated. And that grudge space. Oh, so I don't want to detract too far. I wanted to ask how in that process of starting to forgive and in starting to forgive, gathering that data, what do psychedelics have to do with that? How can like plant medicine, entheogens, things that shift your state, how does that affect the forgiveness process? And how can you lean into that?
I'm actually new to this space, but I think the plants know what it is that we need to heal. And I think it just gives people the opportunity to revisit situations and not experience pain. Because it's hard for people when they go through some traditional therapy. It's very painful to relive and to rehash those experiences. I think psychedelics provide some form of comfort as people do revisit these situations and allow them to see it in a different light. I can speak of one of my experiences with psychedelic, and it was around one of my children's fathers. So I have two what we call baby daddies. And one of them, my first child's father, was not a part of my child's life. And so when I had my experience, I did not know that I was still holding on to some sort of grudge against him. And I was able, with the use of psychedelics, I was able to see this situation from another angle. It was really beautiful, and it helped me to release a lot of pain and a lot of anger that I felt, and a lot of things that I felt about myself, or things that I even thought that he felt about me. The medicine was like, in that space, it was like a comforting mother in that space. I really can't explain it, but it was very healing, and it allowed me to approach it from a place of curiosity and love, because I thought that he hated me. And during the experience, it was like, no, he didn't. He did not hate at all. He just didn't know what to do. During this time when you both were very young and had a child, he actually cared about it. He cares about his child, just did not know what to do. So I remember coming out of this trip, calling my daughter. You will not believe what my experience was when I took this psychedelics. I said it was very healing. The next time you see your dad, tell him I forgive him. I am very sorry, because I was able to see his pain, some pain that he had gone through, things that he had experienced during that time. So it just really opened me up to see myself and to see him in a different way, to see him as a human and not as a person that was out to hurt or my daughter, and that he wasn't present. He did the best that he could, and he did the best that he knew at the time. So I just think that it gives us, it creates another portal for us to go into, to examine ourselves outside of us. So I don't think I could have been able to do that with a regular type of session I had tried before. But no, I'm sorry, I gotta use this language, but this nigga hurt me. I don't want to forgive him, but it just created a beautiful and healing experience, purgatory, if that makes sense. And I'm new to this space. Like I mentioned to you before we even did this interview, I'm very new to this space of psychedelic medicine. And I was afraid of it before I did it. But once I did it, it was like it just peeled back 20 years of pain away from my mental space, where I was able to look at the situation really from a compassionate place for myself and for him. And I thought it was important for me to do that so that I could let my daughter know that she was not a mistake, that she was created out of a loving situation, even though it didn't seem like it.
Yeah, let's take a breath. Thank you, Shaquita.
Okay.
Thank you for your courage. Okay. I know that this is a new space for you, and it's important for this conversation to be happening right now. Number one, because you're a human being. Number two, because you're a nurse. Okay. You're a nurse and a PhD, and you work in the mental health field.
Mm.
And regardless of how new you are, you've been in the game for a long time. And for you to have a profound experience with psychedelics that has trumped everything that you've done in the past to get you where you are is a very powerful testament of psychedelics and what we could do to support other people in this space. So regardless of how new you are to the field, to the space, and all of this, you've had a profound journey that has changed your life.
Changed my life. It did.
And there's so much resistance for nurses in this space and doctors and human beings, period, around psychedelics because of the stigma that's been placed on them. So thank you for your courage in being here and expressing this. And thank you for using your full voice. Okay. I don't care what you have to share. You can use every word in the book if you want to here. Okay. Your voice is welcome here. Thank you, Shaquita. I appreciate you, family. I really do. This is when my daughter was born, I was 20, and me and my daughter's mother had an interaction sexually once. Right? Okay. So that was it. And yeah. And so I had a lot around not forgiving myself and being in the space of not being like my daughter's mother moved away to Sacramento and had my daughter. And I didn't see my daughter until she was 2.5. I had a lot of not forgiving myself. A lot of my mother was telling me what a terrible father I was and all of these things. And I had a lot of challenges forgiving myself. I found my forgiveness in the psychedelic space. So we have a lot more in common. Every time I speak to you, we have more in common. You know what I mean? So thank you for your courage and your bravery in bringing this to the table. It's important for these things to be shared here. And for somebody to have the chops that you have and to have the resume that you have and to have worked with people that you have in the ways that you have, to be able to share this around forgiveness and how the power of psychedelics can support that forgiveness process is an honor to witness. Thank you, family.
Thank you. Thank you. I just think that it helps to, it just creates a different space for people to heal. I know we have all these medications and all these therapies, but people don't get better. And it's sad to see, and it breaks my heart to see. And if this was available to more people and delivered in safe space, in a space where they can integrate it as well, if they don't have the skills, because I process myself, I feel safe in doing that, but some people need to be in a supportive, nurturing, and loving environment when they do this. And I think it could just be transformational for the planet, actually. So these plants are intelligent, and we can put intention into the experiences as well. I think it'll be beautiful for people because, again, like these medications cause a lot of side effects. We use them, they do help for the moment, but using the medication and practicing principles like forgiveness, it can just turn somebody's life around. I recently had a client who had experienced some abuse. It wasn't a psychedelic experience. I went through a process with her to teach her how to go back in to get what she needed from one of her parents who had passed away. And we went through this really beautiful visualization. And I was thinking, if I could give psychedelics to this person in this state that I'm in legally, this would just transform her life completely. She did well with what we did in that session, but I think it would have been more profound and powerful if she had psychedelics to assist her in that particular process. But the next time I saw her, she told me she felt like 100 pounds had been lifted off of her because of the process that we went. We did something similar to internal family system. She said it's just transformed her life, and people ask her what she's doing. She said she feels like she's glowing. People say her energy is different. She carries herself different. She's getting out of bed. She's talking to people. She's taking a bath or things like that. And that just really touched my heart that a process like that could do that. And she's still carrying a lot of things that she needs to release, but with the addition of a safe space and having psychedelic medication, I think she would find herself, find who she was created to be in this world.
Thank you for sharing that, family. And thank you for being a part of that. And thank you for considering the depth of where people can go with this. And we do have another thing in common. We are persons of melanation. Right? We are people of color in this country, in this world. And there's a lot of generational trauma and traumatic circumstances and situations where people are, where our people are being oppressed still in many ways. And there's a space where there's not forgiveness happening and it keeps us enslaved. And I feel like one of the most powerful spaces for me to learn, there was a series, I guess it was probably about a year that I was going to journeys. and facilitated by some awesome facilitators, but they weren't people of color. And I would sit in the journey and people would come over and be like, what's on your heart? And I'd be like, the slave trade's on my heart. And I'd sit there and I'd talk about the slave trade and they'd be like, I got to go to the bathroom. Right. And then they would never come back. And the facilitators couldn't sit with me. And it was a big deal for me to be in that space where I wanted to be able to explore that. And I saw people walk away from me and I started to find that I was actually building grudges against the people who would walk away from me because they didn't want to hear about what their ancestors did and the impact it had on me. And so I had one experience where I forgave those people and I let go. And then I started to forgive all of the ancestors of those people and my ancestors. Okay. Because you and I are of a light skin tone. We've got some white coursing through these veins. And so I had to forgive myself and the ancestry that runs through me around all the heinous acts that happened in Europe that drove the slave trade. And so it was a big deal for me to be able to forgive in that space. And I let go of a lot. I let go of a lot of weight. I let go of a lot of hangups, a lot of body pain, a lot of things. And I think there's room for us as leaders, as being nurses, as leaders in the psychedelic field, as leaders in the mental health space, to be able to support people in moving not just into psychedelics, but a space of forgiveness. I think it's super powerful what you're doing, Dr. Shaquita. You're awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think that we give those people power when we hold on to what they did. Now, I won't ever forget it. I acknowledge it and I speak around it a lot. It wasn't right, but I don't consider myself to be any of those diminutive terms that people use when they talk about Black, right? I don't consider myself to be underprivileged. I don't consider myself to be oppressed. I don't adopt that kind of language about myself because I don't feel empowered by those people, the they that we often speak of. Because I think when we do that, we give up our power, and our ancestors don't. And this is my assumption with my spiritual practice that I have. I don't think that our ancestors want us to continue to bathe in sorrow about what happened. Yes, we're going to acknowledge what happened, but we got to move. We got to move forward and stop giving them power. Going back to your villain, your trying, the victim keeps the villain in power. So even though they're not there physically controlling them, they're controlling their emotions and their mental state because they are always talking about what someone did or thinking about what someone did. I feel sorry for these people that felt that they were better than other folks and that they thought that they could steal humans from an entire continent and enslave them. What kind of life did you have? What happened to you where you felt that you could do this to another human being? So not feeling sorry for them in a way where I'm like, oh, come give me a hug or anything like that, but just looking at it, like I always look at things from a place of curiosity and what makes you think that you are better than anyone, because we're all created, all humans, all this shit that we have created as far as race and things like that, and inferiority and superiority complexes that some of us have. We had all this shit is made up. But don't want to see themselves as equal. We don't want to see ourselves that way. But yeah, I just think that holding that, looking at things the way some of us do, just keeps us disempowered. We do need to know our history and things like that, but I'm not going to allow that to hold me back in what I need to correct some of these ancestral patterns that a lot of us hold on to, that keep us enslaved, that keeps us in crime-ridden neighborhoods, that keeps us from improving our neighborhoods. So now we don't need a damn slave master because it's so indoctrinated and innate within some of us that we oppress ourselves too. I do know the larger system is responsible for that though, but it's lack of compassion, lack of forgiveness keeps us in a cycle of abusing ourselves.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Powerful, family. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Would love to hear, before we start to wrap up, We'd love to hear about your practice in Atlanta and how people can work with you, how they can find you, how they can lean into the forgiveness space with you.
Yeah, and go to www.harmonyhealthwell.com and you can click contact. You can fill out that form to contact me with any questions that you may have. If you live in Georgia, I do accept patients by telehealth, and you can make an appointment on the website as well. So in my particular practice, I do combine a lot of this spiritual work with my patients. I see most of my patients are Black. I do see other races of people, but I do large work with the Black community. So I use a lot of spiritual principles in my work as well as medication if they do need those things, because a lot of people don't have access to psychedelics. But they can reach out to me at the website and make an appointment. I'm also on Facebook, Harmony Health on Facebook, on Instagram, Harmony Health Well as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to put all of that in the liner notes for the show notes. I'm excited for people to get to know you and follow Dr. Shaquita. She's a gem and she's funny and she dresses to the nines. She's got a lot of... She's a beautiful individual. And if you get a chance to have a conversation with Dr. Shaquita, she's one of the most informed and inspirational speakers I've had an opportunity to speak to in a while. And there's a lot of knowledge brewing from this human being. And I invite you to lean into it. So, Dr. Shaquita, if you had one piece of advice to offer the people that you'd want them to take and walk with for the rest of their lives.
Wow. One piece of it is laugh and learn.
Perfect. Laugh and love and add some forgiveness to the mix. Laugh and love and add some forgiveness to the mix. Thank you, Dr. Shaquita. I am so grateful for you being here, family. I'm looking forward to growing with you. We will be at Reconsider again together in May in New York. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to hopefully see you at the Condor Approach coming up at some point in the future. And I can't wait to see you. Thank you so much. Remember, rate, review, subscribe, share this with a friend. If you feel that this is important, please share it with somebody. Our growth and our reach is dependent upon you sharing. So thank you so much. I love you. Be easy, Sourcey Poo. Be easy, be free. And don't forget,
laugh and learn.
Integration is not optional.